In the act of mere hours, using all the salvage they'd had, Rick Tetch had already gotten the first idea of what their new society would look like. It wouldn't take a long while to create, given Tetch Technologies had already created a special tensite that would protect everyone from the toxic rays of the exposed sun. And while the name of the idea had already been thought up, how it would actually work and what they would use as materials was another story in and of itself. Nevertheless, anything involving Rick was out of sight, out of mind to Isabella and her friends. Over the course of a few weeks, Tetch Technologies had finally crafted some real food for everyone to eat. In the span of that first year, everyone in the bunkers had been eating dehydrated survival meals and cooking them with cigarette lighters, and they were also bitter and tasted like old tuna made of powder. But now, finally, they were able to eat bread and beef and even a little bit of flavored water just to get the sensation of drinking something sweet, if only for a brief moment. Relatively, though, everyone was given one meal per day, and it was up to you whether you wanted to eat it all in one sitting. If you wanted to get some work done by signing up for projects with Tetch, it was advised you eat before you would go out to the toxic desert that once was our beautiful Earth. Everyone on the job got a few fillings of water kept in special canisters that wouldn't erode into acid out in the sun, but the metal was scarce. So usually the jobs weren't many, and for the first few months it was more of an unlucky lottery. After 3 grueling weeks of wearing hazmat suits out in the sun, the society's most useful source was all but finally done. They were called papyrus skins, a play on the Egyptian word papyrus, and they served as another specially crafted double layer of skin everyone wore on their entire body under their clothes. The papyrus skin was as clear as the color of glass, and even though it was in multiple layers, they were actually extremely thin and durable to boot. So, if those with papyrus skins on were to dress as casually as they used to, many couldn't even tell the difference. There was one problem that never really seemed to go away. The process was painful, like getting a tattoo, and anyone under the age of 17 would experience very harsh rashes that were as painful as second-degree sunburns. So, Tetch Technologies had not only picked their subjects very specifically, but only those who'd mattered enough into puberty would have been clarified as safe enough to have them on. Even on Isabella's 17th birthday, she was ushered to a special building not too far off from the site. On the way, she had to wear a hazmat suit, while Rick Tetz specifically volunteered to join, as she was ushered to a special lab with 0 windows, a special booth, and a large room with a shower curtain on. But before she began the process, though, she was asked a few questions so the lab biologist could craft her papyrus skin as perfect as possible. Most of them were about comfort and whether or not she had any specific disorders or anything. And the last one was about her usual size. As an example, Isabella was actually permitted to answer as such: Hispanic American, 17-year-old female, average height. Then they told her to wait near the entrance on a soft bench while they went into the back of the lab to craft it. When they came out holding what looked like a white latex one-piece uniform, and called her name, she was instructed to go to the room and change behind the shower curtain. There she fully undressed herself and stretched on the papyrus skin over her arms, legs, backs, and chest. Back and chest, sorry. After she put her old clothes back on, shoes and all, Isabella saw a bottle of cream which served the same purpose as the papyrus skin, only to reach the places that the papyrus skin couldn't on its own, i.e., her forehead, ears, chin, cheeks, and neck. Yeah. The cream was a little too soft for her lips and hair, so she needed special lip balm and special hairspray for those. When she was done, she walked back to the site and waited for 1 hour for the papyrus skin to sink into her skin, and she was required to take it off before every shower thereafter. And much like the papyrus skins, Isabella was unexpectedly roped into another project of Rick Tetch's, when she was selected to join one of the Tetch project jobs out in the desert. Isabella tried to back out of the project, but it wasn't exactly a choice you could pass off to anyone else. And if she was ever going to make some money of her own, she needed to do the project job full-time for her whole day. Inevitably, the papyrus kids would always get sweaty after working in the sun all day. So then Rick created a precaution by making the workers also wear the old hazmat suits over their protective armor from the lab and the papyrus skins, which were still loaded with the regular clothes on top of it. But because the hazmat suits were much bigger than the papyrus skins and simultaneously very hollow yet thick, for many people on the job, it was either like standing under an umbrella or bundled up in blankets on a hot summer day. It was either a blessing or a curse, and there wasn't a clear way to tell either. You would just know when you put it on. At least all of the hazmat suits got washed at the end of the day after everyone returned to camp. It was about a few months after Rick started being known as Ranon that he finally tried to talk to Isabella again. And as a result, she started calling him Richard as retaliation. She still very much wanted nothing to do with him, but at the same time, she couldn't exactly escape him. After her first project job, Isabella had soon endured 22 more before New Cairo was finally established. By then, about 85% of the rest of humanity that Tetch Technologies had saved were protected by papyrus skins. So Ranon decided that it was about the right time that everyone relocated to the final site of the new civilization. Blueprints hadn't even been drawn yet, but now all the sites would be closer, so he'd assured himself everyone would be fine. Even for those who were still a little bit too young to have papyrus skins. Even at this time, though, he was still fixated on one particular person and making sure she was happy. So, with the brief schematics and its blueprints laid out, as well as all the materials they need secured in a safe place, construction had literally begun overnight, and by the first crack of dawn, Isabella now had a place of her own to live in. It had a balcony, 2 huge bedrooms, a nice-looking living room crafted on a hard metal base and covered in carpet, a great water and plumbing system supplied by Tetch Technologies, a beautiful marble-crafted kitchen, and working electricity to keep the lights on. What's probably more important, Isabella noticed this when she moved in later that day, is that it was fixated on the edge, overlooking a giant field of sand, practically the size of a state that would later be the site of the new Neo-Egyptian civilization Ranon Tetch himself would overlook the establishment of, like he was founding his own country. Once she realized this, Isabella finally went over to Richard's site to get some damn answers. It became evident in the last few days that Richard had abandoned his greaser 1990s bad boy persona for something more regal yet still rife with power and awe. He dyed his black hair a striped blonde, and now he wore more dark navy blue tuxedos, with a few yellow or gold ties every now and then. When Isabella marched through the Saints and opened the gossamer curtains to see a lightly colored, yet still high-tech building, high enough to still fit in the tent, he became aware of her presence, and he stepped out. "Ah, Miss Rosa," he greeted her in a friendly manner. "To what do I owe the pleasure of your entrance?" "What the hell is going on, Richard?" Isabella shouted in a confused yet irritated tone. "Ah, it's Ranon now," Richard corrected her while he pointed up his finger. "I've got to be a man of the people, young Isabella." "Then why are you always fixated on me, Mr. Man of the People?" Isabella barked before walking up to him intimidatingly and thrusting her finger at his chin. "I know what you're trying to do, Richard. You're trying to sucker me in with your hypnotizing charm, and then you'll break me into pieces. You've been doing it ever since we first met." "Miss Rosa, that was in high school before the Ecollision," Richard consoled her gently. "Things are much different now. The line between chaos and order has become thinner and thinner by the day, as people are struggling to survive out here. I just want what's best for all of us, and this new civilization will provide all that, plus more." "And what are you going to do to us when we've outlived your usefulness? Throw us out into the sun like invading pests?" Richard gasped. "Why, no, Miss Rosa. And stop calling me Miss Rosa! Isabella snapped. I have a first name too! But Isabella, Richard asked in shock, why do you insist on my absence? Isabella gritted her teeth and said, you tried to turn me into a criminal, Mr. Tetch. You had me in your bed 3 weeks after we met, and I was too mesmerized into your unruliness to even see it coming. Anna said you were a spider, and I was caught in your web. Olson said you were trying to gradually seduce me. And Aaron said you were just going to throw me aside when you found a girl prettier than me. Only down there, stuck for a year in those bunkers, while you were turning this dead world into your literal sandbox, did I finally realize they were right. You aren't a savior. You aren't a nice man. You are pure evil. And I assume next, you're just going to burn the freaking cottage you made for me down. Am I right? Just because I talk back to you in ill will? Richard Tetch was speechless. Isabella turned around and began to walk out, until she heard a soft, somber muttering that she realized he was crying. Nevertheless, she walked out back to her tent anyway, even though she did end up spending the night in that specially made house Richard crafted just because it was comfortable.